occasionally switch it on. Thank you, Rakesh. I think very interesting. It's a very different perspective. Sorry about that. So what I was actually trying to see is how what Rakesh has actually mentioned, which is very different from what we have spoken and what most of the speakers will be speaking. When you have policy equivalence, that means most of the policies are the same. When the talent is also reasonably okay, and when the social infrastructure is, if that is also okay, how do you make a difference? And what are the, or in other words, he also talked about what are the kind of, what are the areas or the domains that the entrepreneurs who are actually trying to operate from a state like Kerala should focus. Because of IT industry's permeation and the kind of multiplier effect of value creation on and across the boundaries. So if you're selecting a particular location as a place for you to work, and most of you are working in Kerala, then maybe that's what he was actually talking about. Should you look at travel and tourism as an area? Should you take banking and financial, because we have probably the highest density of penetration on most of those banking and on the services sector. So that's how I'm actually trying to relate to what Rakesh was actually mentioning. So now I will invite Ravi Gururaj, our Chairman Product Council of NASSCOM, one of the most important councils of NASSCOM, to address us, and then we will definitely take the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, VK. Thanks to my fellow panelists who indulged me in my late and tardy appearance here, only because the flight was delayed. But let me start by telling you a little bit about, I took Indigo today. And on Indigo, if you notice, and maybe the next time you fly Indigo, the cockpit door has a sign on it that says, flying is a important profession, or is a very important profession. Please leave your cares at this door when you enter the cockpit. So basically what they're telling pilots is, hey, whatever issues you have in life, check it at the door here. You got to focus on the job at hand. And I think entrepreneurship is like that in some sense. You're going to have to check all your fears at the door and plunge in. And let me tell you what it is really, fundamentally. It's about the pursuit of opportunity regardless of resources on hand. That's fundamentally the difference. I've been employee number 1 5 times in my life. And every single time, there was no money in the bank. There was nobody else on my team. Everything about my plan was uncertain. It was a hypothesis I had. I had to kind of cut the umbilical cord to everything else I was doing in order to have credibility jumping in and to be able to bring all the other stakeholders on board. And that's fundamentally what is different about entrepreneurship and even an intrapreneurship opportunity. In an intrapreneurship opportunity, at a large company, you may be driving a project, but there are resources. There are resources. There's infrastructure. There's other people to work with and ideate with. Whereas as an entrepreneur, you're alone. Generally at that first moment, right? When you're employee number 1. Actually, probably employee number 0 is what most founders think of themselves as. Because they now have to go recruit co-founders. They have to recruit capital. They have to recruit customers. They have to recruit credibility of various kinds, right? So I was trying to figure out, after 5 esteemed speakers, what could I talk about? I'll take the entrepreneur's perspective and share with you what I think you should be thinking as an entrepreneur. Because they've covered, all the other speakers before me have covered so much ground that there's no need for me to repeat. But let me tell you, in the India context, how I would think about opportunities. I see 2 paradoxically different silos of opportunities. I call them the 1% opportunities and the 10x opportunities. Let me explain. I think VK had a slide that said, here are all the different industries that, where you could go in and build businesses. Think of it like this. You can either save money by reducing cost, making something faster, better, more efficient, and that's possible to, if you could take 1% out of some huge industry or some huge sector in either efficiency, productivity, cost, in capital utilization, whatever it is, if the industry is big enough, that's a huge opportunity. Last week I spoke to the Tata group of CTOs. They gather once a year, and they have a forum where 100 of them come together. And, the Tata group is the largest industrial group in India. And, it's 70% of its revenues actually come from outside the country, right? And that's thanks to TCS more than anything else. But, they're so diverse, and they're trying to solve all kinds of problems. And for them, really a problem is not interesting unless it's going to be at least $1 billion. Because how do you move the needle even on a $100 billion industry, right? Industrial group, if you're not at least going to deliver $1 billion in revenue. And they're thinking about, but the way they're thinking about it is the 1% opportunities. Can we go into power and make power 1% more efficient? Can we go into education and make outcomes 1% better? And maybe you can aggregate many 1% in an industry and you come out great. And I think there are actually lots of very agile opportunities for internet and technology-enabled startups to go build those 1% and to partner with large firms. So, I would think, the 1% opportunity, okay, just to give you a framework. Now, let me tell you what the 10x opportunities are. So 10x is 1,000%, right? So India is full of 10x opportunities as well. 500 million Indians are going to come online over the next decade, 600 million, who have never touched a desktop computer before, for whom the first and only digital experience will be the smartphone. Now, they are going to have digital identity, a digital wallet, and this smartphone that's going to be always connected. Now, obviously some people will turn around and say, but 4G doesn't work for me today, where are we headed? I'm saying project. When you're an entrepreneur and you're starting today, you have to think of what the world will be 4 or 5 years from now, because that's what you're going to build to. If you're short-term and trying to figure out what you can solve today and completely optimize and sell today, you're not going to really get there because somebody's probably already doing it. So think where the world will be 5 years from now. Think a world where you have 800 million Indians who have smartphones that are connected with digital identity, digital wallets, and what kinds of services can you deliver to them? And I think there's a huge opportunity there because it's a leapfrog opportunity. Let me give you one example. There's a startup that's thinking about how they'll provide medical services in villages in India, right? And they're actually going to go and provide state-of-the-art quantified health to somebody who's never even been in a proper hospital ever in their lives. And so they're going to have iPhones and sensors and gadgets and telemedicine, all of that built into some box that's going to go into a village somewhere ruggedized, and they're going to deliver it to somebody who's not even been to a hospital before. Now that's a 10x opportunity because there are hundreds of millions of folks around the country who would benefit from that. So think of those in education. India is a land full of opportunities in my mind. In education, energy, manufacturing, logistics. There's just all of these, both the 1x, the 1%, and the 10x. And, industrial IoT. We get lots of entrepreneurs who are just doing the next social media, the next e-commerce. There's so much that you could do with industrial IoT, for instance, not even consumer IoT. I know consumer IoT is more quote-unquote sexy, it's more happening, but, that's going to get very consumerized. It's going to get very, very productized. It's going to get delivered by the big platform players in my mind, more often than not. But the industrial IoT opportunity is huge. And it's where you bring sensors in, you work with industry here, and you figure out what you can build that will deliver those values. So I would say those are two areas. I just want to frame kind of the opportunities that are there. Now, fundamentally, it's a great time to be an entrepreneur. The world has never been flatter than it is today. One, business models. Two, which is, you're going essentially to a subscription-based model. So the second is the topology. You got cloud, which you didn't have even 4 years ago, available all across the landscape. You've got distribution platforms, the app stores. So somebody in Udupi, somebody in Cochin can build an application and distribute it throughout the world, collect in 100 currencies. They were just not able to do that before. And by before, I don't mean decades ago, I mean 4 years ago they were not able to do it. Now a small team of 4 or 5 engineers can build something and market it. In fact, last week when we were at a NASSCOM meeting, we met a startup company. There's 3 engineers based out of here that's got the #2 cooking app in the world. And they're making $60,000 a month, the 3 of them. Now that's amazing. It's highly empowering because now they don't need capital anymore. They're actually hunting for ideas and what they can do next. And so that's, I think, the fact that you have distribution available is amazing. The last other thing I'd say is design. And this is an area where we're really a little bit lagging. We just don't understand that in today's world, the out-of-box experience is super, super critical. Every product is going to has to look like a Ferrari. Otherwise, nobody's going to touch it. In fact, the Ferrari has to look like the Tesla. Otherwise, nobody's going to touch the Ferrari. And that's the world we live in, which is you're one click away from being abandoned. So, there's very little loyalty. It's not because people don't like you. It's because your competitor's a click away. It's because they've got a plethora of choices. It's because they can be bombarded with reviews, recommendations from friends. All of that is pulling them away from you. And in order to hang on to them as a customer, as a client, as a user, you're going to have a sticky experience. You're going to have to keep delivering. Every update, every version, you're going to have to keep that going. So there's no lock-in. It's very hard to achieve lock-in. Even the platforms have a hard time achieving lock-in. So just be aware of that. The design factor, the out-of-box experience is super critical. And it's actually something I would go, they often say, go agile design, build iteratively. I'd say even do the design up front. Wireframe the entire product if it's a software product. Build out the experience if it's a combination of software and hardware. And go really test those prototypes. Will they fly? Before you go deep on an entrepreneurial venture. So let me say a couple other things. I often get asked, what should I look for in a mentor? And, I want to go and work with Cognizant. And, if I'm going to go work with Cognizant or Capgemini or, one of the large firms, what should I expect to get from them? And what should I go and look for? And I'll say there's like 5 C's that you want to get out of them, okay? The first one is you want to go and get some coaching from them. I go in there saying, can you tell me about this industry? Can you take a look at my product? Can you give me some insight? Can you give me some feedback? That's the right approach in my mind. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs will go in there and say, are you investing in this? And how can a large company tell you they're going to invest in this or not? They first want to understand what you're trying to do. So I would say go in with that mindset of, I just want to be coached. Don't even bring up capital. Don't even bring up investments. Don't bring up any of that nonsense right up front. That will become a consequence, a natural consequence, if you're able to get to base 1, which is coaching. The next thing you should do is really go in there and say, can you connect me to somebody? And, can you connect me to somebody else within your company? Can you connect me to somebody who might be an expert? Can you connect me to somebody who might be able to give me the insight if they're not able to give me the insight? The third thing is check if they can connect you to a customer or become a customer themselves. And the last one is capital. And that comes as a natural consequence of them becoming a customer. More often than not, you get an investment because either the company has used you, or a customer of theirs has used you. It's at that point that you become strategic to them. And the last thing is, all of those 4, if you're able to do it well, it leads to credibility. That's really what you're looking for from a large corporation, right? Oftentimes I get this question, and it's the same for, by the way, guess what? That you look for even in an individual mentor. Don't go right away and say, can you write me a check? It doesn't work that way, right? It's go the Go through the 5 C's in that same order, and I think you'll be successful in both mentorship, engaging with corporates, and trying to build a really lasting relationship there. So let me just close on a couple other things. One is that I really truly feel that there's an opportunity for Indian entrepreneurs to build mobile-only businesses. Is one. Is how can you build Salesforce if you assume there's nothing else other than a mobile phone? If you're trying to build for India, and guess what? If you actually build an awesome, let's say CRM, I'm just using CRM as an example. There are 100 other areas you could go into, but if you build an awesome mobile-first, mobile-only experience, guess what? It'll be interesting to lots of people around the world, because that's where we're headed, and that will make you think disruptively, think different, right? I already pointed out the industrial IoT opportunity. Really think about that. The third is an API-driven economy. I have not seen enough Indian startups that are willing to build headless cloud services, that do intelligent things under the hood, don't expose any UX, and just basically sell an API, or sell access to data, intelligent analytics, intelligent algorithms under the hood. I think there's a huge opportunity there to go build those kinds of businesses. And again, giving you a bunch of things that I'm seeing across the ecosystem in terms of ideas where we can really go out there and compete. And I think finally, I just end with, the Indian entrepreneur today is really audacious. And there are lots of examples of that, and I think we've got over the stigma of a startup is a bad thing. You won't be able to raise capital. I think we've got a very audacious entrepreneur developing across the landscape. And the other thing that we've also got is a little bit of founder syndrome. So we've got an audacious entrepreneur on one side, and they keep plugging away at it. Yeah, but I think to Aruna's point, I think she made this point of, at some point you got to know when to give up. And so, you've got to get out of the founder syndrome, which is I need to be a founder. There's actually a lot of merit in joining another startup team. After all, that's what happens in Silicon Valley so much, and which is great engineers peel off other startups. It's a regenerative process. Startups die fast, but that talent then goes back into the pool, joins other teams, and you have this Darwinian process of some great startups coming up. And that's important. So, just because you can survive on water and fresh air forever, don't do that. Because the only thing you as an entrepreneur really have is time. That's why they call it sweat equity, right? Because you're putting in your sweat, and sweat is representative of time and perseverance, right? So essentially, that's your investment. And if you give it away free by just hanging around some opportunity that's dying or not actually going to break out, you're wasting your time. So it's hard to figure out when you break away, but you should have some mental model for when you break away and when you want to go do something else and consider other startups. So that's all I had for today. I hope it's a little differentiated than what the others had already articulated, and then we can go to the discussion.
Thank you, Ravi. Ravi has been an ardent supporter of entrepreneurship in Kerala. This is probably the second or third time he is actually coming to Kerala. Whenever we request him, I have requested him. He has readily agreed, and it's extremely inspiring and value-adding, all of the points that he's actually giving to us. Very interesting. So that is 1% opportunity or 10x opportunity is fantastic. I think it's a very, very good way of thinking about it. Then when you approach mentors, mentoring, and I mean, last time when I interacted with the startup people from Kerala, they have been talking about mentoring is the real issue. And for one to achieve that, I think you really need to go after people. Nobody has time, so therefore you really need to go after time. And then when you get time, please remember the 5 C's which Ravi has actually mentioned. The coaching aspect, the connect to someone, customer cap, all of those. And again, how to build a disruptive thinking in our within us. The mobile-only application, as an example, which Ravi has mentioned, is again interesting. And in fact, all the 3 speakers talked about, Aruna, Chandra and Ravi talked about the importance of failing quickly. I think the time for us to give up, and that's founder syndrome. Let that not be a chain on our feet. So with that, I think we are concluding the panel speeches. So this is the time now for you to ask questions, and that will be the most valuable part of this session. I will request the audience light to be actually enhanced a little bit so that we will be able to also see people, and if you can dim the podium lights a little bit. And let's actually, if somebody can also help with the microphones to the audience. So the floor is open, please, you can ask questions. Thank you.
Excuse me. I have a question here.
Please stand up, identify yourself.
My name is Girish. I used to be a software engineer some time back. Now I'm teaching in Muthoot Institute of Technology. So I would like to know if there is anything called an open source revenue model. Because abroad I have seen a lot of big companies, corporates as well as startups taking advantage of open source. So in India, is it possible?
So I think, you should not think of it as an India-specific thing. You should think of it as a global business. Generally, open source is successful if you can build a community around what you're offering. Just a company that has a product and then just open sources it doesn't mean anything. It has to be something that is community-driven, has community built into it, has contributors, and then I think you start to see a real value around what is let's say, a popular open source product, right? Now, you may have a product that's a commercial product for which you license the source to others who wish to white label, do things. That's a different type. I'm assuming you're talking about like an open source project, like a Red Hat, Linux, stuff like that, right?
That was...
No, for example, Mr. Nandaguma was mentioning about platform.
Yes.
So now, if you're a product company, and if you open source your primary platform, that means you get a lot more people to work on the platform. So that's an added advantage. So instead of you investing money on developing the platform itself, you get so many people to work on like the kernel itself gets developed.
Yes.
And then Red Hat can put additional...
Absolutely. And there's very successful models for that across the world.
My specific question was, is there a revenue model? Like, do companies survive on open source? Can they get money out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. They get it from support. They get it from value-add projects they do on top of that. They get it from licensing deals where they provide a premium kind of... It's a support model is one, okay? The second is value-added modules that sit on top of the platform, the open source platform. And the third is most of the open source companies that are, let's say, not public. Red Hat is a different example, but all the other ones, they've actually been acquired by other companies downstream, right? So they're creating value. So don't assume just because you're not able to generate revenue, you're not creating value. Especially in open source, if you can aggregate developer eyeballs, if you can get people to adopt the platform, and you're the credible source of that platform, you absolutely can create value. I'll give you an example. When I was at Citrix, there was a company called Cloud.com, and they were building an open source platform which is called CloudStack, which is a cloud orchestration tool. And we went out and we acquired them for a few $100 million. They had less than $1 million in revenue, right? At the time we acquired them. But they had momentum in the open source community. And like that, many open source projects have done very well as a result.
I probably can add a couple of more points onto this. We built platform because there was nothing like that existed in the industry, for that matter, because there was predominantly application softwares are built. Those days it's all databases or application servers. That's all the platform is all about. Today that's not the scenario. We are building ecosystem platforms, which may be for healthcare industry, maybe for transportation industry, maybe for financial industry. What we focused is to create the big philosophy which we are chasing is a philosophy called enterprise value chain management, which is to how can we have a single platform for any industry to connect to your value flow within the organization. Value flow means money flow, maybe value for NGOs. I mean, that's the philosophy which you're driving. So for that, we needed a technology layer. But we built the technology, but the moment technology becomes available, that is, we make it applicable. For example, we needed multi-window browser way back in 2001. So we built a browser of our own. But when multi-window, multi-tab capability came in browsers, we discarded that. I mean, that's the kind of, but then if you are making that platform as your business, that's also a great opportunity, just like what Ravi just said. You can leave it to the open source and more people will come and contribute to that. But you can provide additional services to that. You need to be clear which business you are in. So we want it to be the end business, which is a value to the business community, not the technology provider. But we do build technology for enabling that. Another example I can take straight away from a similar example, Uber, if you really look at, there's no underlying technology they're building. It's all the use case of connecting the customer and end user is what they've done. I mean, that's a great value proposition.
Yep. So, as you can think of more questions, there is one question that I have. Since this is asked by one Mr. Jacob, since IT is predominantly export-oriented, which is the key factor for locating your setup? Is it talent, capital availability, social infrastructure, or infrastructure for IT? This is what they're actually talking about. But first of all, I think we have to change that assumption that IT is predominantly export-oriented. In my view, I don't think India is going to exist in isolation, and in that our opportunities are going to, for large companies, when we are engaging, probably more opportunities overseas. But if you really look at the opportunities, now India is big opportunity for new entrepreneurs, because huge, huge opportunity. So we should not assume that. And again, my take is, with my experience, personal experience, I think, of course, there are advantages of being in big metros. When I was about to start IBS, I actually paid advance for office space in Bangalore. And then I was on my way back to the place, to Dubai, and I came to Trivandrum, and I happened to see Technopark and changed my mind, and that's how I started. I still feel I was actually sharing this thought last week in Kumaragam, that now if I look back in hindsight, that was a very good decision that I've taken at that point in time. So I think access to talent, as well as social infrastructure, access to some of the key influencers, for example, in our case, the government and the bureaucracy, and social and political stability, these are all very, very fundamental things. So I do not believe we are going to exist in isolation going forward. There are some advantages of, if I am in Bangalore, if you're in Bangalore, then you have access to other companies, the ecosystem is a little bit more accessible. However, I would say talent is a very important aspect. Any other question?
I'm KC Jagdeep. I'm running a software outsourcing company in Aloha named as Offshore and Solutions Private Limited. My question is, India is one of the leading IT solution provider, but still we don't have big things like Google or Facebook, and companies like Infosys or CTS or kind of big things are not focusing this kind of things. So any particular reason on that? And also another question is why, I mean, what is your suggestion to build some big things kind of this? What are the areas we should focus to build this kind of things? Thank you.
It's a great point. Yeah, I think we have sort of missed the bus in terms of creating a Microsoft or Google in India, but there are a lot of other exciting stuff that's happening in the country, particularly in India. You know, I'll give you the futuristic stuff. You know, I was listening to the secretary Deity in Delhi. You know, the vision of digital India. You know, if that has to come through, the vision of digital India is to provide every citizen a virtual storage in the cloud so that he or she is entitled for all the services irrespective of where that person is located. So if you are moving from Kochi to Trivandrum or Kochi to Chennai or Bangalore, you know, your entitlements follow you. If you are a ration card, you don't have to apply for another ration card when you go to a new location. You know how painful that is to get a ration card, right? So that type of you know, thing, if it were to come through, we will have revolution in the country, right? Much more than what Google or Microsoft has been able to achieve. So things are in the anvil. But having said that, we have done some wonderful solutions for domestic market in India. I can talk for myself from Cognizant, right? We have implemented this, you know, the trading system for National Stock Exchange. National Stock Exchange is probably the largest or the second largest exchange in the world in terms of number of transactions. And the solution that we have been able to deploy, you know, they were using some imported software earlier, but the solution that we have deployed was able to scale 10 times faster. It has brought down the cost of, you know, running their IT several folds cheaper, right? So if I really look at that type of a solution, it's truly world class. So we even had a conversation with them and say, why not we take this to other exchanges? But they have different ideas. They don't want to be a software company. They're saying, hey, we will offer exchange as a service to other developing markets or even developed markets. So India is really a hotbed for innovation. A lot of things are happening. If some of these things that we are working on, you know, is really come to light, we will be the solution provider for the whole world actually. So that's why I said India is a good market for us to really look at, because the concept of what I call as the frugal innovation is really spreading very rapidly. And that type of innovation will really provide world-class solutions to developed markets. So it need not be just Google or other products companies that we are used to today, but the solutions of tomorrow will definitely come from India.
Yeah, so first of all, when you look at, you have to distinguish between, I think, services companies and product companies or solution companies. In my view, I think services companies tend to remain technology agnostic or product agnostic, which is why I would say that it's not a question of them not missing the boat or not missing the boat. It's just a question of them being technology agnostic, because if you're creating a product, then you're wedded to that in some sense, whereas if you want to work with an industry of customers with 10 different solutions, so it's just a different model. It's not that they were not capable of doing it. I believe all of them were. It's just that the choice that one makes in terms of being in the services business. If you're in the offshore business, that's what you might want to look at. The second aspect of it is around, but even there now in the services business, they're increasingly moving into a platform-based model, which I think is the future. I think there is a limit to how much you can do a lot more services, but fundamentally, even that business model is changing, where you're going more and more towards platform-based services, where you pick one or two products or few products and saying, okay, it may not be my own, but I can still build stickiness and I can build a service which is on top of it and covering perhaps even the entire stack. You can take cloud, you can take the application layer, you can take a product, you can add on services on top of it. And so I think that's the trend, even for services companies, to get more and more into a package solution model. The other point, of course, is why hasn't it been done before? What's changing now is just the availability of capital. I think the whole environment has changed. I mean, 15 years ago, I couldn't think of how we could have got even the capital to be able to do it. But today, if you look at it, it's such a vibrant and thriving community that the whole game has changed. The money is, the services companies maybe need to think that, oh gosh, am I in the right business? Maybe the product game and the apps game is far more interesting.
Thank you, Anna. Any other question?
Yeah. My name is Praveen. I run a software company in Palakkad, Managing Director of Save Software Integrated Solutions. My question is how to create, so we have been talking about entrepreneurship, how to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem inside an organization. Is there any successful companies which has started to create those thing. Secondly, I'm talking to the, I mean, my question is to the professionals, okay? Like, we have CEOs and top professionals here. If they are given an opportunity to maybe the so-called entrepreneurship or ownership or whatever may things, what will be the change? What will be the things that you're going to demonstrate apart from that? You already being a CEO or the top in the organizations. So what is the extra qualities that you're going to demonstrate? Because I just want to differentiate the real entrepreneur. Because nowadays, even the entrepreneurs are CEOs, managing directors. So which quality will is going to take you, I mean, when you consider you as an entrepreneur?
The second part of the first part of the question I understood. In large companies, how do you promote? Do you promote? Do you have what kind of an ecosystem to promote entrepreneurship? What's the second part?
Second part is, for example, Madam is the CEO of this company.
Yeah, Capgemini.
Okay? Yeah. Okay. So if she's given an opportunity to be like an entrepreneur in that company, I don't know how it has to be done. What will be the extra quality, extra things she will demonstrate?
Okay, all right.
Yeah, what is the difference actually?
Yeah. So, okay, I think we understand. So the first part I'll ask Chandra to answer because he runs a very large company, and the second one is pointed to her anyway.
Sort of strong relationship so that we test water, whether those ideas are really, some people are smoking or just, ideas are something worthwhile that customers would listen to. So we test those ideas with some of our existing customers. And if we see some interest, then, we monitor the progress and reward those teams, handsomely. And, if I have to put my finger, we already have about 4 or 5 very, very successful ventures within Cognizant. I'm sure there are about 20 of them who failed, never really made the cut. So, but that's something we were prepared to. But the 4 ideas, we have been able to get the mind share of the customer. One of the ideas that, I just want to share is, today we are talking about, private cloud, public cloud, hosted environment. So you have a sort of a heterogeneous environment to manage and run your IT, right? So one individual had the idea of how can we not create an operating system of these operating systems? Can we not create an operating system for the heterogeneous environment? So you provision the system based on the need, whether it is in the private space or a public space or an in-house. So you make provisioning automatically based on the business need. So that became a fantastic thing. In fact, Gartner, who looked at that, we call it as business cloud, looked at that, they said we were at least 2 to 3 years ahead, right? That was the idea one individual had. So we promoted that individual as the venture partner and really gave him all the assistance to make that venture very, very successful. So we have deployed it in about 30 or 40 customers today. So that's one example, but there are several other examples that I can mention. But so we do have that very well structured program. to really promote entrepreneurship within the organization.
So like profit sharing on these projects?
Yep, everything. You know, it's not based on a normal compensation. The reward system is very, very different. It's not the salary bonus type. You know, it is actually the profit sharing of that venture. All those things.
So ultimately, he feels like an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. We treat that individual like an entrepreneur. The only difference is, it's okay to take risk. You're not going to lose your job. That's the only assurance that we give them. But that makes a lot of, you know, it gives them a lot more confidence to try something different. So it gives them the appetite to take risk, though it's not a very big risk.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay, let me try attempt the second one. So this is a bit different from what everyone says about think big. I believe that if in a large corporation, which is like a juggernaut usually, it's like a big truck, and then for it to come to a stop takes a little time, or to change direction, you know, you need a big space to start changing directions. I think the one difference is that if we have to encourage something like that within our organization, the difference would be think small, think nimble, think agile. Okay, that's the big difference, because as a CEO of a large company, we are so used to thinking, how do I carry my whole organization? How do I implement the change in the entire organization? So we tend to think really big, and it takes a lot of time to impact and make an impact and achieve that change. Whereas here, you need speed, you need nimbleness, you need to show the results in, you know, very, very, very quickly. You don't have to be bothered and, you know, by the entire, the way that you manage a large organization. So I think it's a completely different model, which is why when we say that, you know, if we have to encourage innovation within the company, we cannot put that absolutely within the confines of the large organization, because the way that those are governed, managed, KPI'd are all very different. So we have to pull it aside and say, we need an agile setup, which is completely different from our traditional way of thinking.
Well, if I understand your question correctly, it's about entrepreneurship and management, you know, CEOs. I think, you know, organization or position is only a way to achieve certain things, what you are wanting to achieve. So if you really see that way, you know, an entrepreneur is, you know, what you define as entrepreneur is at the beginning of the life cycle of an organization. But he is an entrepreneur all through his life. And moreover, the performance systems or even of management are getting driven at the CEO levels on the basis of performance of the businesses. So there is a lot of variable component across CEOs. So it's not just that they are not behaving like entrepreneurs. They are themselves entrepreneurs. So I don't particularly see a difference between an entrepreneur and a CEO in that sense. So it's just various stages of a life cycle. You have various forms of organizations and various kinds of positions of people to implement those organizations. So that's the way one has to look at. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Asif, and my question is to Rajesh. Sir, when you decide on the location, is not market demand a factor as well? You know, because we as a startup deliver high services. So I was seeing, you know, high services are primarily from the leading locations like Bangalore and say Kochi for that matter. But market-wise, yeah. So I want to understand if market demand plays a role in that decision.
Yes and no. In the sense, you know, right now we see, you know, world as a market opportunity, right? Rather than looking at very regional market demands. So you're not a company which is catering to regional scales or local scales anymore. You're looking at world as an opportunity, and thus market demand is very universal. And in a similar sense, every location looks at world as an opportunity, not you alone. Every entrepreneur looks at world as an opportunity. So in the sense, you're competing more globally. So market demand exists for everyone. Earlier, market demand used to play a role because only those regional players used to access those demands. Now market demand no more can give you a comparative advantage than other firms. So that's the way I look at it.
So, but if it's more from an enterprise-oriented product, so I mean, what as a startup we are facing is, you know, to get the first customer, you know.
I think they are looking at facing a first customer.
No, definitely the world is a market. You definitely need to understand if it's an enterprise software, there is no reason why it should be local market. And always the world is a market.
No. My question was, when you're setting up an office and base, location based, so if your office or if your R&D is based out of Cochin, does market demand have a
No,
is an attribute?
no relation. It's all about, we talked about it earlier, it's about the talent. I mean, I based my organization in Trivandrum. I mean, people always could not even pronounce that place. And initially, now even more difficult. And Thiruvananthapuram, it's more difficult. And whenever I go there, I say, we are in a place called very close to Bangalore. It's 1 hour by flight. That's how we start with. That's why we have to say. But definitely people do ask, where are you from? And they in fact, we had to bring every customer to Trivandrum and show them where we are. It is that difficult. So, it is not a problem, but as Matthew said earlier, it is about accessibility. I could fly to anywhere in the world better than Bangalore in 1993 from Trivandrum, because it was connectivity was much better than Bangalore. And talent was abundantly available because we could not get talent from anywhere else. And we anyway had to train them because it is on our product, our capability. So that was, and the most important advantage was the loyalty and stickiness of your employees. I mean, our attrition was less than 5%, 6%. We even have people working with us even after 20 years. So, that was a significant value to us, because in those days, you can imagine the kind of attrition ratios on those days. So those are the factors, and talent is abundantly available. Talent is a key thing, I would say.
Now, in terms of the, I think maybe it's this thought may be there with most of the people. See, if you are talking about building something for which you have a local consumer or a customer available, then when you are having a very tight shoestring operation, you have access, you can go to that company without having to take a flight ticket or buy a flight ticket and things like that. That is, of course, if you have potential customers next door, you can save in the initial stages a bit on your sales and marketing cost and customer acquisition cost. That is true, but in many of the work that we are talking about, increasingly that physical distance part will not become that significant a factor. Having said that, I can say that operating a business and delivering a service to certain geographies, you need to have that local competence. For example, if you're delivering services to Japan, if you are delivering services to China, you need to have that local competence is required. But that's the way in which you deliver that service, and also to some extent acquiring the customer too. Thank you. Okay, any other question?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi everybody. My name is Mohammed Nishad, and I'm running a company called Mixcloud. We are a startup, and we develop mobile-related applications. So first of all, I would like to say the presentation was awesome. It was really great. And I have a question for Mr. Ravi. I presume you have mentioned about the opportunities for developing APIs. So I would like to know, like, what are the key points that we would have to look upon for developing an API to reach the targeted audience, okay? And for about open source APIs, how do they generate revenue?
So there's two different questions there. You're asking, how do I target a backend as a service, let's say, that you've built, that's an API layer that's exposed. You'll have to find segments that you can target that have a certain use case. Maybe you'll oftentimes these have come out of patterns, which is, the folks who built mobile backend as a service, they saw repeated patterns being rebuilt across many applications, right? They said, okay, let's abstract. And so there's that insight from having done the work 5, 10 times, then you start to build an abstraction layer. So if you have that insight, in some area, which is, hey, can I take something that lots of companies are doing repeatedly, can I abstract it in a way that is full function for them and accelerates their development, or brings them something that's more resilient, more scalable, you know, you need to have that insight. It's not like, you know, just build an API business. Have you got that insight? If you can, then encapsulate that insight into a cloud service that's available to everybody, right? And then go out to those that have built that problem many times, and it'll be evident to them, right? You can even interview them, figure out what's going on, and then go build these. There are many, many, many of these across the landscape now.
Could you give some examples?
Like, you know, Pass is one that, you know, Facebook bought, for instance, right? You can go take a look at them. Appcelerator is actually both an application layer and a backend as a service. There's a whole bunch of things that Google have that are available, right? There's many, many. You can go take a look at Apogee, for instance, right? And take a look at what all they have available. There's a directory of these out there. Just type API economy into Google and you'll see hundreds of services that expose backends, right? And where you can do interesting things with the backend. So, you know, I can give you, you know, several examples of these, but they're not household names because they're embedded into something else. Only the application developers will know about them, right? If you have an API that takes an address and gets you back a lat long. If there's an API that given two locations, gives you the right route, given traffic conditions in the local area, right? And those APIs are often sometimes built on top of other APIs. There are mashups. So some of those APIs actually use Google on the back end, or, you know, some other cloud service on the back end, right?
Okay, why would companies expose their backend to any sort of generic developers? Because backend is the core of their product, and it's very critical for them. So why would they do that? Why would they take that risk?
So platform companies always expose their APIs to at least customers, because you need to be able to customize the experience sometimes. They can't provide every experience that somebody's going to use a platform for, right? So there are vertical areas where you might take what is an experience. Let's say, for instance, you know, Salesforce has an extension of APIs that allow Salesforce to be extended. There are marketplaces of applications that have been built on top of the Salesforce platform that extend the Salesforce experience, add functionality, right? So think of it that way. Why does Salesforce expose its API? Because otherwise, how does the partner ecosystem collaborate with them? This is the contract of collaboration, which is, I expose an API to you, I secure that API, I have a contract with you in terms of how you will use that API, what the terms of service are, and then you can go and innovate on top of my platform. And that's the key, which is, you're now building something of value, you extract certain amount of value, but you add value to my platform because you've made my platform more useful to my customer, right? By what you've brought to the table. So that's why companies add it. They're not as scared as you might think. They're not giving away their source code. They're giving away a contract to access their cloud services, right? And the database that customers have in them with the consent of the customer.
Thank you.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gentlemen.
Oh, everything is chargeable. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we are coming to the close of our session. I think it is almost half an hour late, but then the good news is that we started half an hour late. So any further question? I have one question in hand. Any other question? I'll take the last question if you have any. Yeah, one of the
Hi, my name is Vinod Sebastian. We run a small software to SaaS company. So my question is, we are creating, working in SaaS for lead management system. So we want to create our own lead management system to cater to small and medium business. So my query is, if we produce the product, how can we market it? Because the world is so wide, and we don't exactly know who. We know it is the small and medium business. It's a generic product. So how do we put it to the customers? Do we cold call them, or do we email them or should we put it in a cloud? So that's my basic question.
I think, this is the kind of question that gets asked a lot by, first-time entrepreneurs and others that are getting started. And it's always a little bit tricky, right? How do you do it? There's a plethora of ways of doing it. I mean, from advertising to finding organic ways in which you can grow your customer base, from finding ways in which you can build community around your product, from finding, other partners you can leverage. Oftentimes, I would say to you, acquiring a virgin customer is very expensive. Okay, so find ways in which you can serve customers that are already aggregated by a platform. So if you're doing lead gen for a specific industry, is there a platform provider that has an interest in marketing you? Can you tie up with a Microsoft or a Google or whatever, and they can then get you to the SME because you've added value to their platform? I mean, think about that, because if you're just sitting here in Kerala and you're saying, I'm going to market to the world and start from scratch, because then you'll need a lot of money to go advertise, acquire all those customers, engage with them, retain them, and then, kind of build a revenue base on top of that, right? And it takes a lot of time to do that correctly. Now, that said, there are a lot of good SaaS companies that are building good revenue streams across the country. The best answer is not actually to ask this panel, but to go talk to those folks. You'll find several SaaS companies right here in India that are doing very well. You can go ping one of the founders, have a quick chat with them, understand what they're doing, ping several of them, because not any one model will work for you, but you might come away with certain insights from each one. And there are lots of other workshops and all that. Even we run at NASSCOM on exactly this topic. How do I build a SaaS business? How do I scale it up? How do I reduce my customer acquisition cost? How do I increase retention? How do I then monetize better? These are all fundamentally, templatized answers in Silicon Valley now, but we're trying to bring those answers to entrepreneurs like you. So get involved. Lots of these are put online as well. We try to make them all available, even if we're not running them in Kochi itself. We're trying to make them all available online, okay?
Thanks.
Actually, even before you ask that question, you have to ask that question to yourself. The lead management system that you're talking about, who is going to actually buy it from you? Is it truly valuable? Have you spoken to at least, say, 5 SMEs in your, in Cochin? And what is the value that you are actually proposing? That is a very important thing. And once that is validated, then whether it is SaaS or otherwise is a mode of delivery and scaling aspect. So I think fundamentally that question you have to ask, how is it actually adding value? Who is your customer? Can you find 5 in your vicinity? Is something which you should look at. Okay, so for want of time, because of the time aspect, there are a couple of questions which Aruna has to answer. 1 or 2.
One question, I will not take it. Okay, but one, this is, it says, what will be your 60 seconds elevator pitch to sell Capgemini services, let's say to an executive of a hedge fund industry? Okay, so let's take a shot at it. Huh? Chandra, you're not allowed to copy it. Okay. So here's, let me take a shot at it. I'll say to him, Mr. Customer, I can show you how I can use IT to help you achieve a 10x improvement in your profitability. That's it. And he will turn around and say, are you telling me you know how to run my business? Most likely that's what the question will be. You're telling me you know how to run it. I'll tell him, I'm sure you know how to run your business, but I can tell you, I've seen your competitors and I know what you're missing, and I can show that to you and show you how to implement it. That's it.
Excellent. Very good. So there is another, actually, I have a real life experience of this particular one. Our company was pitching our logistics solution to an airline. And they were not getting much success, and then I had an opportunity to meet the CEO. He happened to do to be present in a conference. His name is David Karp. I had to make a pitch to him so that I will get his attention. And this is what I told him, and we do business now for last 7 years with that company. I told him, David, we will be able to actually help you earn 5% more revenue with the same cost that you are incurring. This was my statement to him. He didn't, he gave me a kind of a look, and then halfway through the conference or so, he said, let's actually go and have a drink today evening. So you will get time, you will get plenty of time, because the CEO of a company has 2-3 distinct pressure, how he is going to grow his business, how he's going to become more profitable, how he's going to create differentiated customer experience. And this is the pitch line. This is what I think one has to think. The last question for the day. This is an interesting question. It's very easy. This is asked by one Augustine. I don't know where Augustine is, still in the audience. It's very easy to get employees hired to multinational companies by just looking at the mark and percentages. You do a lot of recruitment. But how do you think a startup company get a teammate? How can I get a teammate? This is a question that he has actually asked. So I can say, two of us have started companies and run here, so I can say, I don't think you recruit a teammate. Actually, you normally enter together, typically, isn't it? Most of you would be schoolmates or college mates, or who have worked together. So that's perhaps how you do. I don't think you hire a teammate. Probably, if you have hired somebody to the organization whom you found very, very good and have the same passion as you have, and then eventually he could become a partner.
In fact, I can reflect further. I started the company with a partner, to be frank. I mean, two of us. The name itself came from that. And this is only when Keltron offered this what you call sabbatical program for 5 years leave to start a venture, and only two of us took the benefit from the company, and both of us had we joined as partners, but he also started his own venture. He said, if one of them survive, we will have something to lean on. So that's how we did, but 3 years down the line, both of us went our own ways, to be very frank. So partnership is, absolutely take the point. It has to be, it is not someone you hire, you go to start with. Thank you.
You just have to look at the paper to see where all the IIT grads and all these people are joining. They seem to be more interested in startups than the big companies. If anybody is worried about getting talent, it should be the big ones.
With respect to starting a team, I think it's always the most critical decision, especially the early members, right? The single-digit employees that you might have on the team. I think you tap into people you've worked with in the past, that you respect, that bring differentiated value to the table. You don't just pick all your friends or your classmates because those are the people you know. It's said a lot, but rarely followed, because honestly, you might have to pursue them. This is actually the tougher pursuit, is the pursuit of talent, and really good talent in the early stage. And it can make a huge difference to the company. I mean, the first 2 companies I did them alone. The next ones, I brought in people, even though I was the employee number 1. Before we raised capital, we brought in really good people, and it made a huge difference, because it's like a multiplier effect. And 1 + 1 + 1 is actually equal to 10. It's unbelievable, especially we have the right chemistry between the people. They complement each other. One person's really good at selling, the other person's really good at the technology, the third person's got some unique capability that they're bringing to the table. That chemistry is unbelievable when you can achieve it. Oftentimes just going and finding friends, it's easier because they're more likely to say yes, but that's not necessarily the right answer. So I'd say it's a hard task. There's no easy formula to it. Try and find people who are already doing something. You'll be surprised who you'll be able to hire if you go try and really aim high. Because there are people who you'll say, no, he'll never join me, or she'll never join me. Just go and try. Because it also, when you're trying to pitch those people for talent, guess what? You're refining your business plan. You're refining your own thought process of, is this going to work? If you go meet a bunch of really smart people, and they keep telling you, I'm not joining because of this or that or whatever, and ask them why. And some of them will say, no, I'm not that interested in leaving my company, whatever, ... right? But that process is very good. It's a cathartic process in some sense for a first-time entrepreneur or even an entrepreneur starting out in the early stage, because it gives you much more insight than VCs. VCs will very pleasantly say, sorry, this is not a good fit, and you'll never hear from them again, or a one-liner, and there's no insight there necessarily. Whereas somebody you're trying to recruit will actually tell you, no, this is the objection, that's what I think, this is what I think, and ask them. And you'll learn a lot, And I think you'll be surprised to go out there and really try and aim high for people who are already doing really kick-ass things in other companies. And that's the key. I think, bring in people you may even be uncomfortable with. But say, man, that guy might be a better CEO than me. And is that going to make you feel uncomfortable? Damn good. That's exactly what you want, because you want 2 CEOs in this company. Because it's going to make the company accelerate. It's going to actually get you funding faster, because they're going to say the team's great. Because that's fundamentally what people are going to be evaluating in the first stage. Is, ideas a dime a dozen, right? Can this team execute? Have they got all the gaps, the major gaps filled? Is this a team I want to put some money down on and bet on, right? And that's what, finally, if you bring a great team into a room, the VC is going to be very hard pressed to say no. Because they're going to say, this team, you should leave that room with the VC having the feeling that this team, by the 5th meeting, is going to get funded. There's no chance 5 VCs in a row are going to refuse this team. They may have an investment thesis. They may say, no, I'm not into medical devices. I'm not into this, whatever. But you should be at the point where the VC says, this team is going to get funded, and I really have to think. Because they only think on a few opportunities a year. Honestly, deep thinking on a few opportunities. And you have to be one of those. If they look at 1,000 plans, they'll fund 5. And that's really the ratio, even in the big firms. And you want to be one of those 25 they considered before they funded the 5. And it's very hard to get there, and oftentimes it's the team, not just the idea.
So I think, we are very late, and I think it's time to close. So once again, the parting line will be this. I think the digital future is extremely promising, and it clearly reinforces your resolve to actually pursue entrepreneurship. Please look at, again, when you look at the opportunity, the 1% opportunity and the 10x opportunity, both are present. Again, use what Chandra has actually mentioned. Think big, not in terms of making big money, but that will, I think, financial sustainability is more important. Start small, fail quickly, and scale fast. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, I think it has been a great, 2.5 hours for us to be here. And I take the opportunity to thank the eminent panel that is present here today. And this is not very common to get such people to spend so much of time with you. So it's I would request all of you to give a round of applause to the eminent panelists. Thank you, and I hope you will be enjoying the rest of the afternoon as well. And once again, my fellow panelists, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I also request VK Matthew to present the memento to our panel speakers.